Hey, it's you, man, from KC95 here. Good evening and welcome to Toasted Tavern. Your host, Scott Tobin, and the man called Wags are ready to bring you the night in sports. So pull up a stool, grab a drink, and let's get toasted.
And John Hewlett, thank you as always for that wonderful introduction. My name is Michael Wags, Wag Connect, joined alongside by Scott Tobin. And welcome into the Toasted Tavern. It's a brand new week, a brand new set of shows, and hopefully a brand new set of optimism as the Cardinals made some moves at the trade deadline that we're going to talk a little bit about, and they're getting ready to go on a very winnable streak of games potentially right here. We also have NBA free agency opening up today, NFL Hall of Fame game, and the induction ceremony coming up this week. And, also the Indianapolis Colts might be wishing for a do-over here after news dropped today about Carson Wentz. But first off, Scott, man, how are you doing? I know it's going to be a long week for you, and I know you had a long weekend before that, but, man, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Yeah, this is going to be a crazy busy week. This may actually be the only time I make an appearance on the show this week, but that might save people. They don't have to listen to me or look at my ugly mug for a couple of days. So it'll be a good break for people, if I'm not around for a couple of days. Yeah,
so you're going to stick them with my ugly mug and my ugly voice. So, at least if anything, we cancel each other out, right?
There you go. That's what we do.
That is what we do. And yes, Abomination Gaming, you are first. You were the first one in the studio today. So thank you for joining us. Appreciate everybody that's joining us right now. And before we get to the Cardinals, we want to talk a little bit about something we got coming up in the next couple weeks that is really, really exciting for us. We're still trying to nail down a couple of more particulars, but we've got a pretty good groundwork for what we've got coming up here the weekend of August 13th, 14th, and 15th. Scott, why don't you let our viewers in on what we're planning to do and how they can be a part of it as well?
Yeah, so people in St. Louis probably know this. The Cardinals will be in Kansas City that weekend, like I said, starting a week from Friday. And Toasted Tavern is going to hit the road as well. We're going to pack up our vehicles and make the trek up to Kansas City. And on Saturday, we're going to be joining forces with our friends, Dr. Doswell, Bob Kendrick, at the Negro League Baseball Museum. And we are actually going to do a live show from the museum on Saturday afternoon. They're going to join us. Hopefully part of the Cardinals radio broadcast team is going to be with us. There may be some other very well-known people who may be joining us. We're still working on getting everything lined up and who's available and at what time. But we're definitely going to be doing a live show from the Negro League Museum on Saturday afternoon, probably 12:30-ish, I think is what we're shooting for. So if anybody's making that trek up to Kansas City, or if you're in Kansas City watching us, stop by, come in, say hi, check out the museum if you've never been there before. If you've been there before, go see it again because it's pretty cool and you get to see us and hear us ramble about some stuff. And like you said, there may be some other really cool people, way cooler than us there, that you may want to meet and talk to on Saturday afternoon. We're also going to be at Kauffman Stadium at some point over the weekend, probably Friday and maybe Sunday, possibly Saturday night as well. So we're going to be all over the place in Kansas City. So we don't just scare people on this side of the state. We're going to make our way to the western part of the state and terrorize those people. So it's going to be fun for us, and I hope people will join us and check us out. And it's going to be a fun weekend, Wags. I'm really excited.
I am thrilled. I know this is something that we've been wanting to do for a long time. We actually had planned this last year for our other show, among other things, and COVID really kind of knocked that down pretty well. But this is something that we've been planning for a while, and we're just so thankful for Bob Kendrick and Dr. Doswell and the Negro League Hall of Fame Museum for actually wanting us to be out there and inviting us into their facility to really be there and help promote it. Because like you said, if you haven't been there, you need to go up there and take a look at it. And if you have been there, you definitely need to go back, because just like any other museum or place that you can go to, you might have missed something the first time. And now when you go back, you're going to see something you probably haven't seen before. And that's more reason for you to go back another time.
Yeah, and hopefully we don't scare people off. Like, hopefully people don't come to the museum on Saturday, see us, and be like, oh, crap, let's get out of here. Hopefully we don't hurt their attendance on Saturday. But it should be a fun show. And like I said, we've got some pretty exciting surprises lined up, I think is the right word. You may show up and be like, holy cow, is that who I think it is standing there? So hopefully everything works out the way we have it planned, but it should be a lot of fun for everybody on the weekend next weekend.
That is very true. And as we get confirmation of guests, we may leak some details and maybe get you guys guessing at who might be showing up. But once again, once we get confirmation, we'll probably start doing that. Hopefully we get some of that this week. We're very excited about that. All right, let's get to the Cardinals, because we haven't had a chance to talk since the trade deadline went down and what the Cardinals did and necessarily didn't do, as well as some other teams. The NL Central was highly affected by the trade deadline, and other races are being impacted by guys that came from the Central as well. So let's start with the Cardinals first, because they're getting ready to open up a series against Atlanta Tuesday night. You've got two of the guys that you brought in making their debuts as Cardinals on Tuesday and Wednesday night. You got John Lester. Yes, that John Lester in a Cardinals uniform going up against Max Fried tomorrow night, and J.A. Happ is going up against Drew Smyly on Wednesday. Scott, we didn't get a chance to talk about this together yet, but what was your impression of the Cardinals trade deadline moves, and are you positive that they could make an impact?
Surprised. I will say that. We thought they were going to do something over the weekend, and they did. Mo went in, and exactly what their plan was on Friday, we're not sure, because we've heard him say a couple of times they thought they had another move besides these two just about finalized on Friday, and then it fell through. So we're not exactly sure what that was or who, so we can't really speculate, although there were some rumors flying around there about names. But, they did what they wanted to do. They went out and they were able to strengthen their rotation by getting two guys. Yes, I know a lot of people in St. Louis are upset because they're older guys, but you got two veterans, two left-handed veterans that can bring in and can kind of stabilize this rotation. You're going to get innings out of them. They're going to give you 5 or 6 innings. They're not going to walk people. They're going to throw strikes. They're going to make their defense work. And they're guys that both have postseason experience. John Lester, and it's hard to imagine John Lester in a Cardinal uniform because he's been such a thorn in the Cardinals' side going back to his days in the World Series as a Red Sox and then all of his years with the Cubs. But, Lester's a guy who's won 3 World Series. He's been in tons and tons of postseasons. He's got tons of experience. He's a great clubhouse guy. So he's going to bring that to the team. And then you look at J.A. Happ. Happ's kind of the same way. Doesn't have the World Series experience that Lester did, but he pitched in a ton of postseasons. He was on those great Phillies pitching staffs with Cole Hamel and Roy Oswalt and Roy Halladay and all of those guys in the in the mid 2000s, and has been around for a long time. Another left-hander who's not going to throw really hard, but he's going to throw strikes. And I think it gives you, it does a couple of things. I think it lengthens out your starting rotation. It gives you more depth there. It gives you guys that are not going to walk a lot of guys that are going to give you 5 or 6 innings, keep you competitive in games. And then it allows Jake Woodford and Johan Oviedo to go back down to AAA and really work on some things and get ready. Because let's be honest, they were both thrown into bad situations this year where they weren't necessarily ready to be up here yet and just kind of got stuck in a bad spot. So I think it does 2 things. It helps your major league team, and it kind of protects those young kids as they try to develop a little bit more at AAA.
So when you see this type of move, do you see it as more of a push for the playoffs or more of a push for next year where you can do dropping Oviedo and Woodford back down to Memphis? Because, like you said, Lester and Happ, they're going to give you the ability to possibly win games. But is it really the game-changing moves that are going to help them get back into this wild card race, maybe even the divisional race, or was it more toward an eye for next year where these guys won't be a part of the team? I believe they're both free agents after this year, and you got a chance to get your youngsters back down into Memphis to really get their minds right and get more experience at a level that they should have been at all year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both of those things. Like you said, neither one of these guys are game changers. They're not going to come in here and single-handedly help you win a division. But they're going to keep you competitive in games. Very seldom are you going to see John Lester go out there, or J.A. Happ for that matter, go out there, and in the 3rd inning you look up and you're down 7-0. They're going to keep you in games, which we saw in this Minnesota series. If your starting rotation can keep you in the game, only give up 2, 3, maybe 4 runs, this offense has got a good chance of coming back and winning. And, I saw a stat the other day that their record, if their starting pitcher gets through like 6 innings, this team is like 13 or 14 games over 500 this year. So they just need guys to go out there, give them innings, and keep them in games. And so while, again, like I said, it's not that game-changing move. It's just to try to give you a chance to win this year. And I mean, let's be honest, it's not going to be easy for them to make the postseason. They're 6.5 games out of the wild card, which you have to look at. I think right now, I think that has to be what you're shooting for, because if you can make that up, then maybe you catch the Brewers. But I think you look at the Padres and say, okay, there's what we've got to shoot for, because the Padres are scuffling a little bit. And the big news with the Padres is that their superstar, while that team is locked and loaded and there's a ton of talent, Fernando Tatis Jr. hurt his shoulder the other night. And it's that same shoulder that he's hurt multiple times. And it's possible he's done for the year. They're going to do some more tests. He may have to have surgery. And if the Padres would lose Tatis for the rest of the season, that's a huge blow. Plus, I think that team is reeling a little bit because of the fact that they thought they were getting Max Scherzer, and then at the last second, the Dodgers swoop in, get him and Trey Turner, and the Padres end up with nothing. So I think this team's a little bit down, and then with the injury on top of it that same night, I think the Padres might be that team that maybe you can catch up with and pass. And then once you do that, then you can make an eye at the Brewers because we've still got those 13 games. But I think the wild card is what you've got to be shooting for at this point.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, obviously it's closer as far as games back anyway, so you're going to get there first before you would even catch the Brewers. But it is likely that they have a chance. I mean, they're only 6.5 back, like you said. Cincinnati's just ahead of them, and it seems like Cincinnati might be another one of those teams that might be due for a fall here very, very soon. They didn't really do much at the deadline, which I think I was a little surprised about because they were a team that did still have the ability to make a bit of a run. So the fact that they didn't really make many moves, if at all, at the deadline on Friday, that was actually kind of surprising in my mind.
I think the Reds, like the Cubs, are one of those, and the Cardinals to a certain extent, are one of those teams that are not really sure where they're at. It's like, okay, do we go in and really make a run for this thing, or do we try to keep it together and go to the postseason? Because the Reds have a situation too when you look at next year. Nicholas Castellanos has an opt-out, so does he stick around? Mike Moustakas is coming up. He's got an option on his contract. Sonny Gray's a free agent. So I think the Reds are kind of in that same spot that they're just not really sure which way this team is going to go over the next few months. So I think they did add a little bit to their bullpen, but they didn't make any big moves. I mean, the Brewers added a bat, but nobody in the Central really made huge moves that you're like, oh, man, that's going to really change things. The only team that really did anything in the Central that you go, holy cow, that changed things, is the poor Chicago Cubs. And let's just take a moment of silence to feel sorry for Cubs fans. Okay, that moment's over.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, actually, let's all applaud because the Cubs are dead. Yay. Sorry, Cubs fans out there. But, yeah, I mean, we thought they were going to tear a couple pieces away. They tore that whole thing down in Chicago.
They really did. I mean, we thought, maybe Rizzo, maybe Bryant would be the two guys that were going to go, and they did go. Rizzo to the Yankees, Bryant to the Giants. But I was real shocked that they actually did pull the trigger on the Javi Baez deal. Sending him to the Mets makes sense for the Mets because Francisco Lindor is still dealing with the oblique injury, and if he does come back, Baez can shift over to second base. 300 games over there at second base. So it's not like it's a bad move, but I was shocked that Baez was one of the guys that got traded. And Caesar's right. Cardinals should take advantage of soft schedule. They need to take advantage of a soft schedule. We'll talk about that here in just a second. I want to wrap up this Cubs talk real quick. But were you shocked that Baez was dealt as well?
I really was. We were hearing rumors that he was the guy they were going to try and lock up. I'm honestly, even though there were rumors, I'm surprised that Anthony Rizzo left too because he had been kind of the face of that franchise for the last 7 or 8 years. So that surprised me. And then the fact that he went to the Yankees instead of the Red Sox really surprised me. But, for them to lose those 3 guys and Craig Kimbrell and their setup guys in the bullpen, I mean, they just really gutted that team and didn't really get a whole lot back in return as far as, high prospects. I don't think they got a prospect in the top 100 in any of those deals. So, it's going to be a while in Chicago before they're back at the top. And, we've got about 95 years to go till they're due for another world championship. So hopefully it doesn't happen in our lifetime. Again, sorry, Cubs fans.
Yes, yeah. We're a Midwest biased show, so we do talk about Chicago, but I mean, we're St. Louis guys at heart. So anytime the Cubs are down on their luck, we're okay with that. But it definitely has to still be a difficult time for Cubs fans because they did have such a high of that World Series championship, and a lot of people thought they were about to go on a decent run. I mean, hell, Jason Hayward went there because of the youth movement and the ability to win and have fun. Well, Jason, how's that working for you right now?
Yeah, I mean, that was supposed to be a dynasty. That might be the biggest disappointment. We talk about the Dodgers being kind of a disappointment. They were supposed to be so good and have only won one World Series. The Cubs might actually be worse just because with all of those guys, and we talked about those guys. Kyle Schwarber, of course, gone as well. So you've really lost. I mean, Wilson Contreras is really the only piece left of that World Series team that really did a whole lot. I mean, Jason Hayward gave a speech, but other than that, Did he really do anything on the field that helped the team that year?
Not much. I mean, they still have Kyle Hendricks, and he's been a good pitcher for them. I mean, obviously the Cardinals make him look like Cy Young every time they face him. But outside of that, yeah, that's about it. We had questions going into the season about their pitching rotation. That's kind of let them down a little bit this year. And now the fact that they've gutted their offense, it's just going to be a tough time. Now, the one interesting caveat of that is a guy like Chris Bryant will be a free agent after this year. Is he coming back to the Cubs next year? Is that something that is a potential? Or, I mean, I've heard that he's like, ooh, I might like it here in San Francisco.
Yeah, no, I don't see anybody going back to Chicago because, I mean, the whole point of that was they wanted to save money, and the Ricketts family was claiming poor, even though they're, one of the wealthiest ownership groups in the country, and poured all that money into Wrigleyville and all of that stuff. But yeah, I don't see any of those guys coming back. I think it's going to be a long rebuild in Chicago. I think we're looking at probably another 6 or 7 years where the Cubs are right there with the Pirates at the bottom of the division.
Wow, that's a sad update for Chicago fans for sure. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the post-trade deadline stuff, because there were a lot of really, really big moves. Like you said, the Yankees, they got Anthony Rizzo. They also picked up Joey Gallo and Joely Rodriguez as well. The Red Sox did get Kyle Schwarber, so they did get their big bat that they were looking at. The Blue Jays got Jose Barrios, Brad Hand, and Joakim Soria as well. And I know they're sitting in third place in the East right now, but they kind of loaded up not just for this year, but potentially next year as well. And the pitching staff is kind of where we were questioning Toronto as well. Did these moves help them for this year, or really was this an eye towards getting to next season?
This is one of those moves with the Blue Jays that I don't like. Yes, Jose Barrios is a really good pitcher, but the Blue Jays gave up the top 2 prospects in their organization for a guy that they have control. Like you said, they're in third place this year. For a guy you have control of for 2 months this year and next year, and has already told anybody that it will listen that he wants to be a free agent because he wants to try to set the market. So the chances of him going back to Toronto, not real great. So that's an awful big give for a guy like that you don't have a lot of control of when you're not guaranteed a playoff spot this year.
And that's exactly what the Cardinals were in this season as well, as they, third place. Do you make that big move for somebody for a couple months and next year if you're not even really sure he would re-sign here? So the Blue Jays did take that leap, whereas the Cardinals didn't. It's going to be really interesting to see if the Blue Jays can put a run. I mean, they're 6-4 in their last 10. They've got a great offense out there. And now that they're back in Toronto as well, that might be a catalyst for a nice little run there. Maybe they pull the 2011 Cardinals, run where they, maybe not be one of the worst teams, but maybe make that run into a wild card spot. And these moves are what got them there. So it'd be really interesting to see how that goes for Toronto. Over in the NL West, we talked a little bit about the Padres. I mean, obviously the Dodgers, the big winners with Max Scherzer and Trey Turner. They also picked up Daniel Duffy as well. And then the Padres really only made the move for Daniel Hudson, and the Giants get Chris Bryant. In that hierarchy of the NL West, are the Giants still that top team there? Obviously, they are right now with their record, but with the Dodgers adding Scherzer and Turner, do they leap ahead of Giants in the potential category, or are the Giants still really the favorites to win the NL West?
It's going to be really interesting. I mean, on paper, you have to say the Dodgers because, they added Scherzer and Turner, and then you get Corey Seager back on Saturday as well for the Dodgers. So with the talent they have, you would think it would be the Dodgers, although the Giants have surprised everybody all year. And Chris Bryant's going to help that offense, definitely. I mean, that's a big bat to stick in the middle of that lineup. It'll be interesting to see how he hits in San Francisco because that's definitely not the greatest. It's definitely not the greatest ballpark to hit in. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So I think the West is going to be fun to watch as we go down the stretch. I'm really curious to see how that all plays out.
Same here. The AL Central pretty much locked up with the Chicago White Sox. They did pick up Craig Kimbrell from the Cubs. That was a big move from them. They basically got 2 lockdown guys at the end of their bullpen right now. It seems like they're the ones coming out of there. Over in the NL East, we talked about the Javi Baez move. The Phillies picked up Kyle Gibson and Ian Kennedy, while the Braves basically rebuilt their outfield with Jorge Soler and Adam Duvall, and they picked up Richard Rodriguez as well. The Braves are also a team like the Blue Jays where they're sitting in third place. They're 2 games under 500, but they've got an amazing run differential right now. They're a plus 49 run differential, yet they're 2 games under 500. Do you see the Braves being able to make a run here if they can get their pitching staff kind of sorted out.
That Braves team has been weird all year. They haven't spent a day above 500 all year long. They've had a ton of injuries, a ton of other stuff go on with the Marcell Ozuna thing and all of that. I don't really know what to make of the Braves because they play really well for a couple of days. It's just like they're kind of like the Cardinals. They play well for a day or two, and you're like, okay, here we go. And then they lose a couple of games, and you're like, wow, what just happened? So it's going to be really interesting to see how those teams match up the next 3 days as the Atlanta comes to St. Louis. And the Braves play a lot better in Atlanta than they do on the road. So, and the Cardinals play a ton better at Busch. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that series plays out. And the NL East is still so up for grabs. I mean, other than the Nationals and the Marlins, which are done now, the Nationals pretty much did what the Cubs did and tore their thing down. But, those other three teams, the Phillies, the Mets, and the Braves, any of those three teams could still win that division.
And let's talk about this series upcoming here at Busch Stadium beginning Tuesday night between the Cardinals and the Braves. Like we said earlier, John Lester, J.A. Happ getting there. Cardinal debuts on Tuesday, Wednesday, Wade LeBlanc going on Thursday. The real interesting piece that we talked a little bit about before we came on the air was nothing confirmed, nothing really in the mix as of yet, but there's an interesting reason why John Lester is going tomorrow. That's KK's spot. He usually takes the start after Wainwright, and he's not getting that start tomorrow. And the Cardinals were going to go to a four-man rotation anyway for the next couple of weeks with the days off that they were going to have. That's why Oviedo went back down to Memphis before the deadline. But now you've kind of thrown this potential KK stuff into the mix. Are the Cardinals just being cautious right now? Or are we fearful that the same back injury from last year is popping back up?
Yeah, we're not really sure what to make of it. It's kind of weird timing that they would skip his spot. And they haven't really made a big deal out of it, but Mozeliak and Mike Schilt have kind of alluded to the fact that KK's got a couple kind of things popping up. So I would assume it's his back. I hope that's what it is. Hope it's nothing serious. And maybe, you skip him for a spot in the rotation and he's okay. Although, like we know, Miles Mikolas and Jack Flaherty are not too far away. Mo said today that, Mikolas is probably 2 starts away still and Flaherty 2 or 3. So, within the next couple of weeks, you're going to get some help there as well. So, it's going to be interesting to see how this rotation plays out. And I'm excited to watch John Lester pitch at Busch Stadium tomorrow night.
It's going to be a really interesting scene when he takes them out and see what kind of reaction he gets from Cardinals fans. There was a lot of hay made about not just Lester, but Happ as well, about their ERAs this year and how they've been pitching as of late. Kind of diving into it. Yeah, Lester 3-5, a 5.02 ERA, a 1.59 WHIP right now. He did allow 16 runs in his starts in July. But the real thing that if you dig a little deeper is only 8 of those were earned, which means his defense did nothing to help him and made basically innings prolonged because of that. Now, yeah, a great pitcher, Lester, back 4 or 5 years ago may have been able to pitch around that, but that's not the case now. Him coming into St. Louis with the defense that he would have behind him, that surely has to, A, energize him, and B, give him the ability to pitch the way he wants to pitch and maybe look better than people are giving him credit for, just as long as he doesn't have to throw over to first base.
Right. Yeah, I think it's going to help both of these guys. Minnesota's defense hasn't been great this year either, other than Andrelton Simmons at shortstop. So I think both of these guys, Lester and Happ, being able to pitch, they want to throw strikes, they want to get contact and have their defense play for them. And so I think having the defense that the Cardinals have, which is, one of the better defenses all around in baseball, I think it's really going to help both of these guys. And I'm kind of anxious to see it. I would imagine you're going to see the same approach that you get when Adam Wainwright goes out there. You just go out there, you throw strikes, and then you let your defense work. And that's definitely what I'm hoping for, and I'm sure that that's what Mo's hoping for as he made this trade or these trades.
And we've seen it work so well with Wainwright this year. Obviously, yesterday's game, he helped himself at the plate as well. But just Wainwright has been – I mean, I can't say phenomenal because phenomenal would say Cy Young to me, but he's looked so good for his age and his experience. It's just amazing what he's been able to do, and he's really been the stopper for this team. And we talked in the last couple of weeks about who our MVP of this team is. And I think I'm right there in agreement with you that Adam Wainwright is the MVP of this team. Yeah,
and it would probably be the second year in a row because he definitely was last year in the shortened season. And I think he's right there again. I mean, just think he's 9-6 now. He's probably going to get to 12. Well, you think he's probably going to get to 13 or 14 wins, again, and the guy just keeps going. And it'd be hard pressed to think that he's not going to come back for one more year, because especially if they miss the postseason, I don't see him wanting his career to end that way. I think he wants to go out on top, kind of like Yachty. So I would assume that we see them both come back next year.
I 100% agree on that. And going back to J.A. Happ real quick, he's in the same boat, like you said, as John Lester. He didn't have a great defense behind him. The one thing that kind of gives you a little bit of pause with Happ is that his last 5 outings were a little bit worse than John Lester, but almost every single run that he allowed, 29 in his last 5 outings, were all earned runs. So you're hoping that he can come in here and, like you say, get that defense behind him, make him kind of energized a little bit and say, hey, look, the guys behind me are going to make plays. I just have to make my pitches and everything's all hunky-dory. So I'm a little worried about Happ more than I am about Lester. But, Happ is a guy that when the Cardinals face a soft-tossing lefty, they don't do so well. Well, now instead of having to face him, he's joined them. So maybe that'll be good news for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, and there are reasons to look at it and go, yeah, there are things to worry about. But you got to remember, too, that he's leaving the American League, so you get away from the DH. You have the pitcher hitting. He's coming to Busch Stadium to pitch, which is definitely more of a pitcher's ballpark than a hitter's ballpark compared to Minnesota. There's just different things. And then you look at the Cardinals' schedule, and you've got a little bit of a soft schedule the next couple of weeks. So hopefully these guys come in and settle in and things can kind of take off.
Yes, and like you said earlier, our offense is starting to produce, obviously outside of the game on Saturday where they only had the 1 run. But Goldie, Arenado, they're starting to hit. Both of them are basically 1-2 in batting average for those that are eligible on the team. Obviously, Harrison Bader has a higher batting average right now at 286, but Goldie's at 269, Nolan at 264, 17 home runs, 20 home runs. And then the one surprising stat for me, and I texted you this earlier, did you know that Paul Goldschmidt has 7 stolen bases this year?
I did know that. Just because I watched him steal one yesterday and saw the number. But he used to be a pretty good base stealer. I think one year in Arizona he had like 34. So I mean, he has run over his career. He's just one of those guys that is really athletic. You wouldn't think it to look at him that he would be a base runner, but he just runs the bases really well and gets good jumps, gets good reads, and knows when to take off.
That he does. And like I said, these 2 guys are starting to heat up. Dylan Carlson is starting to hit pretty consistently now. You've got Harrison Bader hitting relatively consistent. Tyler O'Neill's still batting 264. He's kind of a forgotten piece in all of this, which is kind of crazy when we talk about this. The outfield is Dylan Carlson, Harrison Bader, and then Tyler O'Neill's like the 3rd guy you talk about. Edmundo Sosa, I know you haven't been a huge fan of him offensively, and his defense has been kind of suspect, but he's starting to turn it on a little bit here as of late. Paul DeJong, happy birthday, by the way. Nice, happy birthday day off kind of thing for Mr. Paulie DeJong. But are we seeing might be the end of DeJong's time here in St. Louis?
I don't know. I still don't think so. I mean, you're going to mix and match with those guys right now. Whoever's hot's going to play a little bit. Sosa had a nice game yesterday. But, with the contract that DeJong has, I would be surprised if they moved him. When we get to the offseason, there's going to be a ton of shortstops available. Maybe if one of those guys doesn't have a spot and their price comes down a little bit, then maybe you look at it. But I don't see the Cardinals going out and paying somebody $200 or $300 million to play shortstop.
It's going to be a really interesting offseason for sure, because there are going to be some names available. One of them that was potentially almost traded to St. Louis here at the deadline. We aren't going to speculate on who it was, but I think a lot of people had a certain name in mind that I think maybe Mozeliak was talking about at that point in time, but it did not happen. And until news of it comes out of potentially happening, we aren't gonna name any names. One last thing on the Cardinals real quick, and a kind of a bittersweet moment in yesterday's game. Yadier Molina passed Albert Pujols for 4th on the Cardinals all-time hits list. So first off, congratulations to Yadi. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. It just shows you the longevity of his career and his ability to progress as a hitter, because when he first started out, I mean, he was batting 216 for the longest time. And now to sit here and say he's the 4th all-time hitter on the Cardinals all-time list is unbelievable. Albert actually gave him a nice shout out after the game as well on social media. But what are your thoughts on Yadi passing Albert? And do you think Albert might sit there and go, okay, if the DH comes to St. Louis next year, I'm going to go back and get that record back?
You never know. You never know. I'm sure Albert was happy for him. We know how close
Oh
the
yeah,
two of them are, always have been. You know, Albert started that post by saying, "Congratulations to my little brother." They've Albert was definitely instrumental in Yadi's early years and making him the hitter that he is. It's funny though. I heard a couple of stats today. If you go back and look at their numbers since Albert got traded, their batting average, their OPS, and their slugging percentage are within like 10 points of each other for the last decade. I mean, it's unbelievable how close to the same hitter they've been since Albert left. But it would be cool to see him come back. And, for Yadi to be fourth all time in hits, I mean, when he came up in 2004, could anybody have imagined that? I mean, he was the guy that, Tony La Russa said, I don't care if he hits 100, he's going to catch because he's so good defensively. And look what he's turned into. And, if he plays next year, he's probably going to catch Rogers Hornsby and be third all time in Cardinals hits. He's not going to get to Brock or Musial, but to end up fourth or third in your career all time in hits in a franchise that's been around for 120 years, that's pretty impressive.
very impressive. And you have to go back to that game against the Mets in the playoffs when he hits that big Game 7 home run. And I think that might have been the moment for him that kind of turned it around, because he was hitting well in the postseason that year. He really started to find his swing. And I just think that moment, and then to be able to catch that curveball from Wainwright to freeze Carlos Beltran, I think that was the time frame where everything kind of clicked for Yadi. And love to talk to him or Benji about that just to see if that's actually the case. But that moment, in my mind, is when it all clicked. And it's just been a storybook ride ever since.
Yeah, and that's something nobody talks about either. Yadi has more postseason hits than any other Cardinal in history. I mean, I know they play more games now than they did back then, but that also comes to the fact that the Cardinals have been in the postseason so many times in Yadi's career. But yeah, to have that record, I think he has the most hits of any catcher in the postseason as well. He's just, the records just keep piling up, and no doubt in my mind he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and eventually there'll be a statue of him right next to the one that went up on Saturday of another Cardinal legend in Ted Simmons, which that was a really cool day on Saturday to see Ted get that and to hear his speech and see the emotion come out of him as he talked about what it meant for him. And it was cool for me because I got to be down there and got to snap a quick picture of Mr. Simmons in front of the statue and talk to him for just a second. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, we got the chance to post that picture on the Toasted Tavern Facebook page as well. I was like, dude, you got a chance to snap that picture? That's incredible. And you said you got a chance to talk with him for a little bit too?
Yeah, just for a couple of seconds, because he was standing there. Like, the ceremony was over. Everybody was kind of mulling around, and, I was down there to work. But then, we were walking around standing there, and I just happened to look over, and everybody else had kind of moved around and were looking at the other side of the statue, and he was kind of standing there by himself. And so I just walked over and said, Mr. Simmons, do you mind if I take a picture? And he goes, no, but make sure you call me Ted. And I said, thank you very much. And I really wanted to jump in the picture myself, but I was afraid I'd get in trouble for bothering the Hall of Famers. But took a picture. He couldn't have been nicer, shook my hand. It was a pretty cool couple of minutes for me.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And you also got a chance to talk to somebody else at the Cardinals game as well. But we don't want to get you in trouble unless you could talk about it.
No, I mean, again, brief couple of minutes, but I had a couple of run-ins on Saturday with Bill DeWitt III, who, again, could not be any nicer of a human being. Couldn't be any more pleasant, more willing to give you his time and say hi and shake your hand. And so, and I actually ran into him twice, at which the second point, he's like, boy, I'm seeing you everywhere today, which not sure if I should take that as a good thing or a bad thing. But, again, just a good day all around.
He saw how hardworking you were. That's what it was. Take the positive out of that, and who knows? Maybe you'll open up your email tomorrow, and all of a sudden you're DeWitt III's personal aide.
There you go. I can handle that.
That would be pretty nice. Pretty nice. Well, we've been so blessed here in St. Louis to have just amazing athletes, amazing owners outside of one, and just amazing people in media as well. And one of those guys is going to be enshrined in Canton this weekend, long overdue. And, once again, COVID rearing its ugly head last year kind of put things on the back burner for this. And now having to share the stage with a lot of people this year instead of just a few. But Isaac Bruce is going into the NFL Hall of Fame this weekend. And you talk about a guy that's incredible, nice, caring, one of the best people in the world. and that's Isaac Bruce. And he's going into the Hall of Fame. First player in NFL history with 3 consecutive 170-plus yard receiving games, 3 career 200-yard receiving games, 8 1,000-yard seasons. Obviously, the catch in the Super Bowl from Kurt Warner, phenomenal. One of the greatest moments of my Rams fandom when they were in St. Louis. But, man, Isaac Bruce finally getting the call to go into the Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, Calvin Johnson's also going in this year, so that's kind of overshadowing Isaac Bruce's wide receiver entry. But still, an amazing accomplishment for Isaac. Could not be happier for him, and just a well-deserved honor.
Yeah, and Calvin Johnson going in shouldn't overshadow Isaac, because Isaac, other than Jerry Rice, they were the top 2, in the mid to late 2000s in the league. I mean, they just were. Isaac, people forget. Everybody talks about Isaac, and you talk about the greatest show on turf. Look at the numbers that Isaac put up in 95 and 96 and 97, when there was no Torrey Holt, when there was no Marshall Faulk, when there was no Kurt Warner, when everybody was double teaming him, because Isaac was the only player on the team that could do anything, and he was still putting up unbelievable numbers. The guy was great, and one of my I'm going to brag on myself again just for a second, but one of my favorite collectibles, and I have a ton of them, but I actually have an inaugural season 95 jersey that Isaac signed for me, and I actually have a picture of myself and Isaac while he's signing it, and it's hanging up on my wall. That's one of my favorite things that I own, honestly.
That's incredible. Yeah, he, once again, like you said, before the greatest show on turf, he was the best Rams player at the time in St. Louis, and he had guys like Tony Banks throwing to him. So it's not like he had the elite of the elite. But he was playing in the same division as Jerry Rice at the time that Jerry Rice was at the height of his career. So, I mean, he really did get overshadowed here. But he was right there with Jerry every year when it came to receptions and yards and all of that stuff. But he seemed to always be a forgotten guy until the greatest show on turf. And then he had a couple of great years, in that time frame that Kurt Warner was here. And scary enough, he did finish up his career in San Francisco, which was a little weird to see for sure. But would he have gone in earlier if he would have had to go up against the likes of a Jerry Rice early in his career? I mean, his numbers bear out that he's a Hall of Famer, but he kind of got shafted for a long time.
Yeah, I think it's just a backlog of wide receivers. There's not a ton of them in the Hall of Fame. And the way the NFL Hall of Fame works, positions just kind of get backlogged, and then it takes for a long time for guys to get in. But yeah, Isaac's definitely deserving, one of the best, like we said, in that generation from the mid 90s to the early 2000s, from like 95 to 2005. He was as good as there was. And like you said, an even better person. While the Super Bowl catch is the memory that everybody will have, and I can still remember jumping up and down, screaming at the top of my lungs. But I think the game that was almost as big, and I know Isaac has said this game meant almost as much to him. You talked about them being overshadowed by the 49ers. They'd lost something like 18 games in a row to the 49ers. And the Rams started that 99 season, on a roll. I believe they were 7-0 when San Francisco came in. And the 49ers made a comment like Saturday of game week and said, "Oh, we'll see. They're the same old Rams." Isaac scored 3 touchdowns in the first quarter of that game. And, they just blew them out, and it was like, okay, here we come. This isn't the same old Rams. And that was kind of the calling color, the turning point where I think everybody in the country looked and said, okay, this Rams team might be for real. And Isaac was huge. I also remember that very first playoff game against Minnesota. The first possession, the first throw, Kurt threw a slant to Isaac across the middle. He caught it and then just outran everybody. I mean, nobody touched him as he ran to the end zone, and that place went absolutely nuts. And that was against Randy Moss and Chris Carter, who were, the top duo in the league at that point in time.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody really even gave the Rams a chance in that game with Carter and Moss at that point, because I'm pretty sure Dante Culpepper was there as well, quarterbacking it. So that entire season was just magical, and it was mainly because of Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt. You had some great guys there, Marshall Faulk, and obviously Kurt Warner, Orlando Pace, all those guys. But sticking with Isaac Bruce, just kind of looking at the stuff that he's done at the end of his career, post-career as well, which is another reason why you look at him as an example. You look at the Isaac Bruce Foundation, the Flight 300 program that he's got going on, being able to provide one-way airfare to kids that have everything set up for college except a way to get there. You talk about the free football clinic that he still holds here in St. Louis every single year. You talk about the scholarship program, the literacy efforts, everything that he does, and it still hovers around St. Louis. Yes, he also takes care of people in Memphis and Broward County as well, but St. Louis is still a part of that mix because of what the city meant to him when he was here. And it's just another testament to his greatness that he, alongside guys like Kurt Warner and Torrey Holt and all these other guys, still cycle back to St. Louis and have it as part of their hearts.
They do. And Orlando still lives here. Aeneas Williams still lives here. There's a lot of the guys that are still in St. Louis that are still, St. Louis is still near and dear to their hearts. And it drives me crazy to see the LA Rams posted a picture of Isaac, in the blue and gold and talked about, welcome to the Hall of Fame, part of the, don't steal that. That's ours. Those guys are not a part of, while I know it's the Rams, but that's the St. Louis Rams. Hopefully the league lets Isaac talk about St. Louis because we know how they are about stuff like that. Hopefully he's able to mention the city and everything. And, real quickly, just talking about that team, because they don't get enough credit because they kind of get forgotten because they're not in St. Louis anymore. But just think about that. How many teams can say we had a team that has, you got Kurt Warner, Isaac Bruce, Marshall Faulk, Orlando Pace, Torrey Holt's going to go in at some point. London Fletcher is going to go in at some point. How many teams can have that many Hall of Famers on one team in the league? That was a special, special team. And while people in St. Louis remember the bad times, those few years of those guys were as good as it gets as a football fan.
Oh, no question. I was brought back to football with that because before the Rams came here, I would watch the occasional Packers game. I never really got into the NFL. Even the first couple of years they were here, it was kind of like, they were terrible. And then 99 brought me in, and it kept me through the entire time that they were here. Even when they were terrible, even when you had the rumors of them leaving, I still watched them because of what that 99 team and really the 01 team as well did, because they were such a phenomenal team and they were phenomenal people. And that's a testament to not just the players, but, Coach Vermeil and Georgia Frontiere and just all of those people that were involved in it and what made the Rams in St. Louis really, really special. And it is a shame that, it's gone the way it's gone. But I think Isaac, and from everything I've heard, he's already got his speech done and ready to go, and it's going to be a doozy for sure. I don't think he's going to be one of those guys that would throw shade at anything. I think if he were to present his speech to the NFL and say, look, I'm talking about St. Louis, but I'm not going to mention any of the negative stuff. This is it. I'm just going to celebrate it. I think the NFL would look at it and go, okay, look, I get it. It's Isaac Bruce. He's not going to basically do something stupid. So I think St. Louis will be mentioned very glowingly in that speech that he presents on Saturday night. And it's going to be real fun to see. And I'm probably not going to be a dry eye in the house because this is the list of guys that are going into the Hall of Fame because it's a combined 2-year Hall of Fame now because of COVID. So you've got Alan Faneca, Calvin Johnson, John Lynch, Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, Steve Atwater, Bruce, Steve Hutchinson, Edgerrin James, Troy Polamalu, Bill Cowher, Jimmy Johnson, Steve Sable's going in as well. If there's anything that's must-watch TV, it's probably going to be the NFL Hall of Fame speeches for this weekend. It's going to be about a day's worth of watching, but man, is it going to be intense, and you're probably not going to have a dry eye at the end of it.
Yeah, I wonder how much John Lynch and Isaac will reminisce about that 99 NFC Championship game and Ricky Proehl's catch in the back of the end zone at the end of that game. But, one more thing about the Rams before we move on. We talk about how amazing the Blues parade was and all of the Cardinals World Series parades. It doesn't get talked about a lot, and a lot of people don't remember it because a lot of kids weren't young enough or whatever, but I will never, ever forget being downtown on Broadway on that day in February with the snow flurries falling, watching Dick Vermeil and those guys come down the street with that Lombardi trophy. That was about as good as it gets to. It was pretty awesome, and it was cold that day.
Yeah, but not many people felt it because of the excitement that you had there. Let's talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame game real quick. Obviously, not a whole lot of practices have gone down for most teams at this point. You got the Steelers and Cowboys, so probably not expecting a whole lot in this first matchup. But I kind of wanted to ask you this question because you got 2 quarterbacks in this game that will probably play a series that are almost at a point where their careers are either over or they're at a crossroads. And I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on who of these guys is going to have the better season? Is it going to be Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh, or is it going to be Dak Prescott down in Dallas? Obviously, Dak coming off the injury, but he has something to prove. Big Ben getting near the end of his career has something to prove still, I think. But which of those two guys do you think will actually have the better season?
I think it'll be Ben. I have a lot of questions about Dak, and now especially with the shoulder thing, we don't know where he's going to be with that or when he's going to actually get on the field again. Well, I don't think Roethlisberger is going to have a super year. I don't think the Steelers get back to the postseason. I think he has the better year, and I think they're right on the verge of the postseason. I think the Steelers probably go 10-7, something like that. I'm not sure the Cowboys get to that point, although a lot of people seem to think they're going to be a powerhouse in the NFC. I just don't feel that way.
I mean, how big of a powerhouse can you be in a division that, for the most part, was under 500 all of the season last year?
Yeah, although, I mean, we've seen things change really quickly in this league where one year everybody's horrible in a division and the next year you can't beat them. But, yeah, I think the Cowboys have too many holes on defense. And, again, with Dak's shoulder and then coming off the foot thing, I'm just not confident that he's going to be able to stay on the field.
I'm pretty much in agreement with you there. I think Big Ben will have the better season, but we'll see how things play out as far as where their teams end up as well. And let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts real quick, because they went out and picked up Carson Wentz in the offseason. They traded a third-round pick in this year's draft and a 2022 conditional second-round pick for him in the offseason. And okay, now he's got a foot injury and he has to have surgery and he's out 5 to 12 weeks. And I look at this and I'm like, he has an injury history. So you kind of knew a little bit about what you were getting into when you brought Carson Wentz into the fold. But the injury itself is from high school, apparently. Are we really believing that or what?
Yeah, that's just kind of odd. When Frank Reich came out and said that they believe that's something that's going all the way back to high school. I guess if he had some kind of small microfracture, it could be that it's been one of those things that's just kind of bothered him and he's played through it and it's just kind of built up to where now he can't. Huge blow for the Colts. Everybody thought going out and getting Carson Wentz with the team they had last year, you add him in, he's healthy. A lot of people had them being a team that could really make a run in the AFC, especially in that division this year, because the other team that's really going to be much in that division you would think would be the Tennessee Titans. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see, the crazy thing, and we talked about this, you and I, earlier, is there's a lot of rumors going around that Nick Foles may come to Indianapolis to be the backup again. And we've seen Nick Foles and Carson Wentz kind of work together in the past, and it's worked out well. And, 5 to 12 weeks, you've got 4 weeks still basically till the season starts. So, he might miss a week or two, maybe 3, potentially. Foles comes in, kind of holds it down, and even if you have to take an extra couple of weeks just to make sure he's okay, get a healthy Carson Wentz. In that division, I think the Colts can still make a playoff push if Foles can kind of hold things down for those first couple of weeks or whoever steps in there.
Well, the hardest thing going for them those first couple of weeks are they play the Seahawks, the Rams, the Titans, the Dolphins, and the Ravens. So it's not a real easy schedule off the bat. But if you can bring a guy like Foles in that could potentially get you to 2-3 or maybe even 3-2 in those 5 games, you're probably going to take it. Because right now, this is their backup situation. You have Jacob Eason, draft pick, Sam Ehlinger, Jalen Morton, and Brett Hundley. Those are the 4 guys that potentially could be the guy that has to start those first 5 games. And, it is kind of Jacob Eason's spot to win in this instance. But I think if you're the Colts, you almost have to feel like you might have to bring in a guy like Nick Foles just to have that experience. And, the time frame for him being out 5 to 12 weeks is so widespread because it really does come down to how he rebounds and how he recovers. Some guys, after 2 or 3 weeks, they get into rehab and it takes them a week or 2 and they're back. Some guys may take a lot longer. Now, with Wentz having so many injuries in the past, this might be one of those where he does take a little bit longer to get back. And I feel like you probably kind of need that security because if he's out, let's just say he's out 8 weeks, obviously that's going to put you into like week 3, week 4 of the season. He's still going to need another couple of weeks to get back into game shape, which means you would probably want to look at him coming back maybe right around Halloween against the Titans, which you would almost have to because that's going to be that game that you have to really win to keep going. I mean, it's surrounded by the Texans and the 49ers and the Jets and the Jags. So it's not like their schedule is tough this year. You have to get them back at a point where you can maybe make a really good push and have a huge win going into some of those other winnable games.
Yeah, I think the one thing the Colts can probably look at and feel good about is the division they're in. Because I think you look at that division and go, okay, we should win both games against Houston. We should probably win both games against Jacksonville. And then hopefully you split against Tennessee. And then you're 5-1 right there in your division. And then you build your schedule around there. So, if you could be, around 500, get wins back, have that run, maybe you can still win 10 or 11 games and you're right there in the hunt for a wild card spot.
That's very, very true. And it's going to be a tough AFC. I mean, you've got Buffalo, you've got Miami, who's going to be pretty good this year. You've got Cleveland, Baltimore. And we talked about Pittsburgh already, potentially pushing for 10 wins. Then you got Tennessee and Indianapolis, and then you've got Kansas City. You got the Chargers, and you almost can't look past Vegas either. So it's going to be a real, real tough AFC. So pushing for a wild card is going to be difficult, and that's why they need to get Carson Wentz back as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and a team that you missed there when you were talking about teams that are going to be in it, and people forget about them, but they're going to be a lot better this year. Don't sleep on the New England Patriots.
Yeah,
with all of the moves they made, the Patriots are going to be a whole heck of a lot better because they got some of the guys that sat out last year back. They made a ton of additions to their offense. Their quarterback position is going to be better. I think the Patriots are going to be, again, one of those teams that are right on the edge of a wild card berth.
Yeah, there was a reason why I didn't talk about them. I don't like the Patriots. So. But, yeah, I think you're right. I think they're another one of those teams that could very well screw up a lot of teams' plans, for sure. All right, let's jump over to the NBA real quick because there were a flurry of moves today as NBA free agency opened up. And a lot of teams in our area were kind of affected by that, especially a team like the Chicago Bulls. And I'm a big Bulls fan. I've been a Bulls fan since obviously Michael Jordan, but I've continued to follow them when they've had Jimmy Butler, among other guys. And today, I'm not sure how I feel about the Chicago Bulls because they made a deal with the Pelicans to bring in Lonzo Ball. 4 years, $85 million. It was a sign and trade. They also brought in Alex Caruso at 4 years, $37 million. And they're also eyeing a deal that sends Lauri Markkanen for DeMar DeRozan in a double sign and trade. And I'm all for the Bulls, upping their game, upping their roster to get them competitive in the Eastern Conference. But I don't know about Lonzo Ball. He was good. Don't get me wrong. He's definitely proven himself in my mind. I just don't know if I want him in a Bulls uniform. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Lonzo Ball in Chicago?
Yeah, he brings some baggage with him with his whole family and his dad and all of that stuff. He's turned out to be a pretty solid NBA point guard. I mean, he's not going to give you a ton of points, but he does distribute the ball well. He plays good defense. I don't think it's going to hurt the Bulls. I don't know. I was surprised to see the numbers that he was getting, but it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, it's going to be real interesting for sure. And a lot of Bulls fans and a lot of Grizzlies fans actually were also like, hey, Jimmy Butler, come on, come back to Chicago. Or, hey, come to Memphis, Jimmy. No, it looks like he's going to get a max deal with the Miami Heat. And not only that deal being set up prompted Kyle Lowry to decide, oh, hey, I'm going to go down to Miami as well. 3 years, $90 million for Kyle Lowry. They give Duncan Robinson $90 million over 5 years, the highest contract ever for an undrafted player. Another one of those guys that's just proven himself. And champion PJ Tucker is going to Miami for 2 years at $15 million. So the balance of power is potentially shifting back down to Miami at all?
It's possible. It sounds like old Pat's trying to make another run before he hangs it up as the president down there. But those are some interesting moves. I mean, the East is up for grabs, as we know. So, it'd be interesting to see if that works out for Miami. I got to ask you while we're talking about stuff, what do you think of all the moves that the Lakers are making? I mean, if nothing else, they're going to have a senior citizen roster of big names out there.
Yeah, all their games are going to be at like 2 p.m, so they can hit the early bird special at the local restaurants, right? Dwight Howard coming back, Trevor Ariza coming back, and not announced, but very, very speculative. Carmelo Anthony might be going to the Lakers as well. 2003 draft pick as well in the draft class as LeBron. Bron and Carmelo teaming up. Super team again?
I mean, they've been close for a long time, and 10 or 12 years ago, you'd be like, oh, man, that's awesome. And Melo's done a nice job as kind of that sixth player the last couple of years. But I don't know. I mean, with Westbrook, I mean, they're definitely putting some names on that team, and they're going to make one more run. But I'm not sure that I like the way they're putting this team together, honestly.
Well, the greatest thing I saw the other day was a meme of Anthony Davis, and basically had him with his head down. And the caption was, when you realize the Lakers signed another guy that you're going to have to rebound for, because Westbrook throws up bricks. LeBron's been throwing up bricks. I mean, Carmelo at least can hit some shots. But, Dwight Howard, Trevor Ariza, are these guys really going to knock down shots? Or is Anthony Davis just going to be like, I thought I got out of New Orleans for a reason, and it's not to rebound for all the other players taking shots.
Well, it's going to give him a shot to lead the league in rebounds. I mean, there's that to look at,
That's true. That's true. He'll get one award this year. Definitely. Chris Paul opted out of his $44 million contract for next year, but he did re-up for 4 years and $120 million with the Phoenix Suns. So it looks like they're going to be another team that's going to stay competitive in that Western Conference next year. The Spurs signs Zach Collins to a 3-year, $22 million deal. Mike Conley sticks with the Jazz for 3 years, $72.5 million as well. But Kawhi opted out. And as of right now, all the indications are he's going to go back to LA with the Clippers, but he hasn't signed anything yet. There's been no announcement about Kawhi Leonard as of yet. And you would think, Chris Paul knew he was opting out. The Suns knew he was opting out, working toward a deal and an extension. Nothing's really been done or talked about as far as Kawhi with the Clippers. Are there any worries that Kawhi might bolt again like he did with Toronto?
If I were a Clipper fan, I would be. I don't know how they would pull it off, but the thing that I would be worried about is that Kawhi figures out a way to sign some kind of one-year deal to join LeBron in LA, because we know the Lakers are always where he kind of wanted to be. He went to the Clippers as a free agency when all that happened a few years ago. That would be my one fear. I think he'll go back to the Clippers. But if he was going to go anywhere, that would be my concern, is that he figures out a way to join that group with the Lakers somehow.
Yeah, let's hope not, because I'm not a Lakers fan, as you know. I'm not a LeBron fan, as you know. I just don't want to see any success over there right there, because we know somebody that's a big LeBron fan and a big Lakers fan, and we don't wish happiness for that.
No, we don't. We don't. I'm done with the LeBron thing, as we've all talked about a million times. Anybody that watches this show knows that you and I are not the biggest LeBron fans. So I'm guessing you didn't see the basketball movie, did you? Space Jam 2?
I did not. No. I was firmly against Space Jam 2, 100% from the get-go, and everything I've heard makes it sound like I made the right decision not to watch it for sure.
Yeah, I've heard it's horrible. I've heard the first half hour of the movie is basically just a chance for LeBron to talk about how great he is, until Bugs Bunny shows up. And then, why do you not leave the Looney Tunes gang as cartoons? Why do we have to change the way they look and do everything? That's, I don't know. If LeBron wanted to do something, why follow in Michael's footsteps? If you really want to be the GOAT, go do something original. Don't do what Mike already did.
Oh, and Will, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry, but you can disagree with us, but it was, from everything I've heard, it was not good. Look, your girlfriend even says it was bad. I mean, come on, Will. Oh boy. Well, like I said, the Cardinals start a series against the Braves tomorrow night, 3-game series. You get to see John Lester, J.A. Happ in a Cardinal uniform for the first time on the mound. We saw them in uniform on Saturday and Sunday as well, but it's going to be real interesting to see both of them out on the mound pitching for the Cardinals starting on Tuesday. It's going to be a very, very fun series. Like Scott said, probably won't be with us the rest of the week, so we're going to try and do some recording as the week goes on to put some stuff up, and we'll try and get a couple of guest hosts in here as well to keep the information flowing, as like I said, NBA free agency is still going to be rampant for the next couple of days. You still got some stuff going on in the NHL. We don't know where Vladimir Tarasenko's going just yet, although the rumors of New York getting involved once again, Alex Ferrario, when we interviewed him a couple weeks ago, felt like the Rangers or the Islanders were very highly unlikely for him to go to. But it seems like those two teams might be the two that are really coming on hot for Vladimir Tarasenko. So we'll see if anything along those lines pop up. Like I said, we'll also talk about the Braves series as well as the next series for the Cardinals coming up this weekend as well. Scott, you got anything else before we head out tonight?
No, man, have a good week. And, hopefully as the week moves along, we'll be able to drop some more details about the Kansas City trip. And other than that, have a good week, man. And I will talk to you at some point.
Yeah. Try and get some sleep because it's going to be rough this week for you. Enjoy the games while you can. Enjoy what you got going on. Make sure you guys tune in as much as possible. And as we get more information about this Kansas City trip, we'll definitely be letting you know, dropping some hints. And like I said, letting you guys guess as to who potentially might be coming on the show when we head up to Kansas City, August 13th through the 15th. For Scott, I'm Wags. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Have a great rest of your night and a great week.
Hey, it's you-man here from Casey. For all your sports news, catch the Toasted Tavern with Scott Tobin and the man called Wags, weeknights at 9 p.m. You can follow Toasted Tavern on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Let's get toasted.